Have you ever been around someone whose presence alone leaves you feeling strangely drained, unsettled, or smaller than you were before? Even though nothing openly cruel was said, there is a particular kind of disturbance that does not announce itself with shouting, threats, or obvious hostility. It moves quietly. It studies you. It waits for moments when your guard is down, and by the time you realize something is wrong, your clarity has already been touched. This is how real harm often enters our lives, not as violence, but as erosion, not as chaos, but as confusion. Stoic philosophers understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. They knew that what damages a person most deeply is not what attacks the body, but what weakens the mind's command over itself. Evil, in this sense, is not a myth or a movie villain. It is a pattern of behavior that undermines autonomy, distorts judgment, and feeds on emotional reaction. And the most dangerous version of it is subtle enough to feel familiar. It may appear as concern, guidance, charm, or reasonableness. It may even look like help. Yet after repeated exposure, you find yourself explaining decisions that were once clear, doubting instincts that once felt solid, and carrying guilt that does not belong to you. Nothing dramatic has happened, yet something essential has shifted inside you. Stoicism begins precisely at this point of awareness, not to label others, but to protect the inner ground from which you live. The Stoics never taught people how to win arguments or dominate social situations. They taught something far more important: how to remain sovereign within oneself. Because once inner sovereignty is lost, everything else becomes negotiable. Manipulative individuals understand this instinctively. They do not need to overpower you. They only need you to begin questioning your own perception. Once that happens, control follows naturally. This is why awareness is not paranoia. It is discipline. It is the ability to observe patterns without absorbing their emotional charge. A person with destructive intent does not reveal themselves in a single moment. They reveal themselves through repetition, through how they respond when boundaries appear, through how they behave when they are not being admired, through how they benefit when you feel uncertain. Stoic wisdom teaches us to look not at isolated words, but at consistent behavior over time. Kindness that leads you toward dependence is not kindness. Concern that reduces your confidence is not care. Advice that strips you of authorship over your own life is not guidance. And charm that disappears the moment it no longer serves a purpose was never genuine. These realizations can be uncomfortable because they force you to let go of illusions. Illusions about people, illusions about harmony, illusions about the idea that endurance is the same as virtue. Stoicism rejects that confusion. It teaches that peace is not maintained by tolerating what corrodes your character. Peace is maintained by choosing where you place your attention, your trust, and your presence. You are not obligated to fix those who repeatedly undermine your stability. You are not required to explain yourself to those who benefit from your confusion. And you do not need to confront everyone who displays these traits. Often, the most stoic response is clarity combined with distance. When you stop feeding harmful dynamics with reaction, justification, or emotional labor, their influence weakens. This is not coldness. It is self-respect. The Stoics believed that your mind is your most valuable possession. Once you allow others to shape your perception of reality, your sense of self becomes fragile. That is why learning to recognize destructive patterns is an act of self-preservation, not judgment. In this series, we will examine 10 clear signs that indicate you may be dealing with someone whose influence is harmful. These signs are not meant to provoke fear, but to restore clarity. They explain why certain interactions leave you drained, why some relationships feel confusing rather than nourishing, and why your intuition has been trying to warn you long before your mind could articulate the reason. Awareness is the first reclaiming of power. When you understand what is happening, you stop blaming yourself for feeling unsettled. You recognize that discomfort was information, not weakness. The Stoic path does not promise an easier social life, It promises a steadier, inner one, and steadiness begins with seeing clearly. In the next part, we will begin with the most common and foundational sign of destructive character, constant manipulation, and how it slowly turns confidence into dependence if left unchecked. One of the earliest and most revealing signs that you are dealing with a destructive person is not aggression, but constant manipulation. It rarely begins with force. It begins with suggestion, with questions that sound reasonable, with concern that seems thoughtful. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ground beneath your decisions starts to shift. You find yourself explaining choices that once felt obvious. You feel a pressure to justify your boundaries, your pace, your priorities, and the more you explain, the less certain you feel. This is not because you are weak. It is because manipulation is designed to create dependence, not dialogue. Seneca warned that those who thrive on fear and uncertainty use them as tools. Manipulators do not seek clarity, they seek leverage. Each explanation you offer becomes something they can press against. Each doubt you express becomes an opening. Over time, your confidence erodes, not through direct attack, but through constant negotiation of your inner authority. You begin to associate decision-making with tension. You rehearse defenses before speaking. You hesitate where you once moved freely. This is how manipulation succeeds. It does not demand control. It invites you to surrender it piece by piece. Closely tied to manipulation is another trait that often conceals itself behind charm. There is a kind of charisma that feels almost too smooth, too attentive, too perfectly calibrated. These individuals know how to make you feel seen, valued, even chosen. Their praise lands precisely where your insecurities live. Their words soothe, their presence disarms. At first, it feels like connection, but over time, something feels hollow. Their warmth fades the moment there is nothing left to gain. Their compliments begin to feel transactional. The Stoics cautioned against being blinded by appearances, reminding us that character is revealed not in moments of display, but in moments of inconvenience. Observe how someone behaves when admiration is absent, how they treat those who cannot benefit them, how quickly affection turns to distance when you no longer comply. Genuine kindness does not require performance. It does not withdraw when boundaries appear. Charm, when used as a mask, is not meant to build trust. It is meant to lower your defenses. Manipulation and charm often work together to distort your sense of reality. Once trust is established, lies can enter quietly. Not always dramatic falsehoods, but small distortions. Details that shift, stories that change, credit that is subtly reassigned, responsibility that quietly moves away from them and toward you. When confronted, they remain calm, reasonable, even wounded. They suggest you misunderstood, that you are being sensitive, that your memory is unreliable. Over time, you begin to question your own perception. This is one of the most damaging effects of deceit. It does not simply hide the truth. It teaches you to distrust yourself. The Stoics believed that truth requires no maintenance, while lies demand constant reinforcement. Pay attention to inconsistencies. Notice when words and actions diverge. Notice when explanations become elaborate rather than clear. You do not need to prove dishonesty. You only need to stop outsourcing your judgment. Trust what you observe repeatedly, not what you are told convincingly. What unites manipulation, charm, and deceit is their shared objective: to weaken your inner sovereignty. Epictetus taught that freedom begins with mastery of one's own judgment. When someone repeatedly positions themselves as the interpreter of reality, they are not guiding you, they are governing you. A virtuous person encourages independence. They want you to stand on your own footing, not lean on theirs. If someone's presence makes you feel smaller, less certain, or more dependent over time, that is not a flaw in you. It is a signal. Stoicism teaches that you do not need to argue with such people. Argument keeps you engaged on their terms. Clarity allows you to disengage on yours. Step back, reduce access, reclaim your inner space. Manipulators lose power when you stop supplying reactions, explanations, and emotional labor. There is no drama required in this process. No confrontation is necessary. Often, silence combined with distance speaks more clearly than words. When you stop participating in manipulation, you are not being unkind. You are being disciplined. You are choosing not to allow your mind to be shaped by someone else's agenda. This is not isolation. It is self-command. The Stoics did not teach withdrawal from the world. They taught selectivity. Choose relationships that strengthen your autonomy rather than erode it. Choose interactions that leave you clearer rather than confused. When you do, you begin to feel a quiet stability return. Decisions feel simpler, boundaries feel natural, and the need to explain yourself fades. In the next part, we move deeper into the anatomy of destructive character by examining what happens when empathy is absent and control becomes the primary goal. These traits reveal not just manipulation, but a deeper disregard for your inner life, one that Stoicism urges you to recognize early, before the cost becomes heavier. There is a point where manipulation stops being subtle persuasion and reveals something deeper and more unsettling: a lack of genuine empathy. Empathy is what allows human relationships to feel safe, reciprocal, and alive. It is the ability to step outside oneself and recognize the inner world of another person as real and worthy of respect. The Stoics understood this clearly. Seneca reminded us that human beings are social creatures, bound together by shared vulnerability and mutual concern. When empathy is absent, relationships cease to be connections and become transactions. With destructive individuals, your emotions are not something to be honored, they are tools to be used. Your struggles are not met with understanding unless they serve a purpose. Your joy is tolerated only if it does not threaten their sense of control. You may notice that when you share something painful, the response feels shallow or quickly redirected back to them. When you succeed, the enthusiasm is muted or replaced with subtle comparison. Over time, this emotional imbalance leaves you feeling unseen, even when you are physically present. This is not accidental. It is the emotional environment in which control thrives. A lack of empathy creates the conditions necessary for domination. When someone does not truly care how their actions affect you, they can push boundaries without remorse. They can dismiss your discomfort as oversensitivity. They can minimize harm and justify behavior that would otherwise require accountability. Marcus Aurelius warned against expecting moral behavior from those who have not cultivated it within themselves. A person who lacks empathy does not experience guilt in the same way. They may mimic concern when it is socially advantageous, but when inconvenience appears, the mask slips. You begin to notice a pattern of indifference, or worse, subtle satisfaction when you are unsettled. This is a critical moment of recognition. Stoicism teaches that you must not argue with reality. When empathy is consistently absent, no amount of explanation will create it. Your task is not to extract understanding from someone incapable of offering it. Your task is to protect your inner stability from being eroded by their indifference. From this absence of empathy grows another defining trait: a hunger for control. For destructive individuals, control is not a preference, it is a necessity. They seek to influence not only your actions, but your thoughts, emotions, and self-perception. At first, this control may appear as advice. They frame themselves as knowledgeable, experienced, or concerned for your well-being. Slowly, their guidance turns into doubt about your judgment. They question your choices, they highlight risks, they emphasize your limitations. Over time, you begin to hesitate without them. You wait for approval. You second-guess instincts that once felt reliable. Epictetus warned that freedom is lost the moment you surrender authorship of your own mind. Control does not require force when insecurity can do the work instead. By making you doubt yourself, they position themselves as necessary, and necessity becomes dependence. Control often hides behind emotional leverage. Guilt is one of its favorite tools. You may be made to feel responsible for their moods, their stress, or their disappointment. If you assert a boundary, you are accused of being cold or ungrateful. If you pursue your own direction, you are framed as selfish or disloyal. This emotional pressure is designed to keep you compliant. Stoicism draws a sharp line here. You are responsible for your actions, not for managing another person's emotional state. When someone repeatedly makes their well-being contingent on your submission, they are not seeking connection. They are seeking dominance. Recognizing this is not cruelty, it is clarity. The danger of prolonged exposure to such dynamics is subtle but profound. You begin to shrink internally, your world narrows, your sense of possibility contracts. You stop asking what aligns with your values and start asking what will keep the peace. This is the slow erosion of inner sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. When someone seeks to control those thoughts, they are interfering with the very foundation of your freedom. Stoicism teaches that autonomy is not negotiable. It is the ground on which a meaningful life is built. Anyone who genuinely cares for you will want you to grow stronger, not smaller. They will encourage independent judgment, not obedience. The Stoic response to a lack of empathy and control is not retaliation. It is withdrawal of access. You do not need to convince them that their behavior is harmful. You do not need to diagnose or label them. You simply need to observe the pattern and choose yourself. Reduce emotional exposure. Limit influence. Reclaim decision-making authority. This is not abandonment. It is self-respect in action. As you step back, notice how your nervous system begins to settle. Clarity returns. You feel less reactive, less anxious, more grounded in your own perspective. This is the natural state Stoicism aims to preserve. In the next part, we will examine how blame, deflection, and the disturbing pleasure some individuals take in others' suffering reveal an even deeper level of moral corruption. These signs show not just a desire to control, but a willingness to harm in order to maintain that control. When empathy is absent and control becomes a priority, the next pattern often reveals itself through blame and deflection. This is where moral responsibility quietly disappears. Instead of owning their actions, destructive individuals redirect attention outward. Every mistake becomes someone else's fault. Every conflict is reframed so they appear misunderstood, attacked, or unfairly treated. This is not accidental behavior. It is a strategy. By refusing accountability, they protect their self-image and maintain power over the narrative. Seneca warned that truth requires no defense, while falsehood must constantly rearrange itself to survive. When you encounter someone who never apologizes without qualification, never admits error without explanation, and always finds a way to shift responsibility, you are not dealing with misunderstanding. You are dealing with evasion. Blame games are psychologically exhausting because they place you in a perpetual position of defense. You find yourself explaining intentions, clarifying details, and correcting distortions that never fully resolve. Each attempt to restore fairness pulls you deeper into their framework, where facts are flexible and emotions are weaponized. Over time, you may begin to doubt your own role, wondering if you truly are the problem. This erosion of self-trust is precisely the outcome they rely on. Stoicism offers a different approach. You are not required to participate in false narratives. You are not obligated to carry responsibility that does not belong to you. The Stoic response is calm insistence on reality, facts over feelings, actions over stories. When clarity is met with continued deflection, withdrawal becomes wisdom. Beyond blame lies a darker and more disturbing sign: the quiet pleasure some individuals take in the suffering of others. This does not always appear as overt cruelty. More often, It surfaces as subtle amusement, dismissive humor, or a lack of concern when harm occurs. You may notice a smirk when someone fails, an eagerness to share bad news, or a strange energy shift when chaos enters the room. This is not mere insensitivity. It is a form of emotional predation. Epictetus advised associating with those who elevate your character because repeated exposure to degradation reshapes the soul. People who derive satisfaction from pain do not seek growth or understanding. They seek comparison, dominance, and emotional leverage. The pleasure of pain often stems from deep insecurity. When someone feels small inside, another person's suffering can momentarily make them feel larger. Instead of building worth through effort or virtue, they borrow it through contrast. Stoicism identifies this as a profound weakness of character. True strength does not require witnesses. It does not depend on another's misfortune. When you recognize this trait, the appropriate response is not confrontation, but distance. You cannot reason someone out of enjoying harm. You can only remove yourself from environments where such enjoyment is normalized. Protecting your inner world requires refusing to remain near those who feed on disorder. One of the most effective tools these individuals use to maintain influence is isolation. Rarely direct, it begins subtly. A comment here, a question there. Doubts planted about friends, family, or colleagues. You are told others do not understand you, do not appreciate you, or secretly undermine you. At first, it feels like concern. Over time, it creates separation. As connections weaken, dependence grows. Isolation is not about loneliness alone. It is about reducing alternative perspectives. When you lose access to voices that reflect your reality accurately, the manipulator's version becomes louder. Stoic philosophy emphasizes community as a safeguard against distortion. Humans are not meant to think in isolation. Shared perspective anchors judgment. When someone consistently positions themselves as the sole source of understanding or support, this is a warning sign. They are not strengthening you, they are narrowing your world. Reconnection is the antidote. Reach outward. Rebuild trust with those who have known you longer than the current narrative. Honest relationships restore balance because they are not invested in controlling you. They reflect you as you are, not as someone else needs you to be. At this stage, many people hesitate because clarity brings discomfort. Seeing these patterns means accepting that someone close may not have your best interests at heart. Stoicism does not ask you to harden. It asks you to see clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind must be prepared to accept reality without resentment. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means releasing the illusion that things will change if you explain better or endure longer. When blame, pleasure in pain, and isolation appear together, the pattern is complete. The environment is no longer safe for growth. The Stoic path forward is quiet and decisive. Reduce exposure, reclaim perspective, strengthen connections that reflect truth rather than distortion. You do not need to announce your withdrawal or justify your boundaries. You simply step back into alignment with your values. Peace returns not because others change, but because you stop negotiating with what violates your inner order. In the next part, we will examine the final signs that reveal a hardened character: envy disguised as care, and the unrepentant heart that refuses reflection or change. These traits complete the picture and clarify when distance is not only wise, but necessary. As the pattern completes itself, two final traits often emerge together, quietly but unmistakably. They are less dramatic than manipulation or blame, yet far more revealing. The first is envy disguised as concern. The second is an unrepentant heart. Together, they mark the point where hope for mutual understanding must give way to discernment. Envy rarely presents itself honestly. If it did, it would be easy to recognize and address. Instead, it hides behind advice, caution, and backhanded praise. Someone congratulates you, but immediately adds a warning. They acknowledge your progress, but remind you of how easily it could disappear. Their words sound reasonable, even caring, yet leave you feeling smaller, hesitant, or subtly ashamed of your own success. Seneca described envy as a sickness of the soul, not because it desires growth, but because it resents the growth of others. When envy speaks, it does not seek to elevate. It seeks to equalize downward. This kind of envy operates quietly. It does not attack your achievements directly. It reframes them. It suggests you were lucky rather than capable, reckless rather than courageous, or premature rather than ready. Over time, repeated exposure to this tone can dull your confidence. You may find yourself minimizing your wins, delaying progress, or second-guessing decisions that once felt clear. Stoicism teaches that joy rooted in virtue does not require permission. A person who truly cares for your well-being does not feel threatened by your advancement. They do not compete with your becoming. They support it without reservation. The Stoic response to disguised envy is internal anchoring. You do not need to confront every remark. You do not need to prove your worth. You simply observe the pattern and adjust proximity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to ask one question repeatedly: does this align with reason and virtue? When advice consistently weakens your resolve, instead of strengthening it, the answer becomes clear. Distance restores clarity. Silence preserves dignity. The final and most decisive sign is the unrepentant heart. This is not about making mistakes. Stoicism never demanded perfection. It demanded honesty with oneself. The unrepentant individual is not someone who errs, but someone who refuses to reflect. They harm others and immediately justify it. They deflect feedback, reinterpret events, and explain away consequences. Apologies, if they appear at all, are hollow and conditional. "I'm sorry you feel that way" replaces accountability. Growth is dismissed as unnecessary. Self-examination is seen as weakness. Marcus Aurelius warned against wasting time debating what a good person should be, urging instead that one should simply be one. An unrepentant heart does the opposite. It debates endlessly while changing nothing. This rigidity is dangerous because it signals a closed inner world. Without reflection, there is no correction. Without correction, patterns repeat. When you remain close to someone who cannot acknowledge harm, you quietly accept becoming collateral to their denial. Stoicism is clear on this point. You are responsible for your character, not for rescuing another's. Compassion does not require proximity. Forgiveness does not require continued access. The Stoic path allows you to release resentment without reopening the door to injury. When repentance is absent, boundaries are not punishment. They are preservation. At this stage, many people struggle with guilt. They remember earlier versions of the relationship. They hope change will come with enough patience or explanation. Stoicism asks for a harder honesty. Hope that ignores evidence is not virtue. It is self-abandonment. Wisdom lies in seeing people as they are, not as they once were or might become. When envy and lack of repentance coexist, the pattern has stabilized. Waiting longer does not bring clarity. It erodes it. The quiet Stoic decision here is withdrawal without drama. No accusation, no final argument. Simply a reorientation toward what sustains your character. You invest your energy where it is met with respect, accountability, and goodwill. You stop offering access to those who diminish clarity or resist responsibility. Over time, the noise fades. Your inner state stabilizes. You no longer feel the need to explain your boundaries because they are no longer up for negotiation. Stoicism does not promise a world free of harmful people. It promises something more reliable: the ability to recognize them early, respond without bitterness, and preserve inner order without becoming hardened. When awareness replaces confusion, manipulation loses its leverage. When self-respect replaces hope for validation, peace becomes durable. This completes the pattern: manipulation, charm without substance, dishonesty, lack of empathy, hunger for control, blame, pleasure in pain, isolation, envy, and an unrepentant heart are not isolated flaws. Together, they describe a character oriented away from virtue. Your task is not to diagnose or condemn, but to choose wisely where you stand. In the final part, we will close the Stoic path of protection by returning inward, examining how to rebuild steadiness after exposure to such dynamics, and how to move forward without carrying bitterness, fear, or distrust into your future. When awareness fully settles in, something quiet but irreversible happens inside you. You stop searching outward for confirmation. You stop replaying conversations, questioning your judgment, or wondering whether you were too harsh or too soft. Clarity replaces confusion, and with it comes a responsibility. Stoicism speaks of often but gently the responsibility to govern yourself. After encountering manipulation, envy, blame, and emotional erosion, many people swing to extremes. Some harden completely, closing themselves off from trust. Others overcorrect, becoming hypervigilant, suspicious of every interaction. Stoicism rejects both paths. It does not ask you to become cold, it asks you to become ordered. There is a difference. Order creates discernment. Coldness creates isolation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act according to what seems good to them. This is not an excuse for harm. It is a release from obsession. Once you understand that certain individuals are governed by fear, insecurity, or hunger for control, you stop taking their behavior personally. You stop internalizing their chaos. Their actions reveal their character, not your worth. This realization is not dramatic, but it is freeing. The Stoic path, after exposure to harmful dynamics, begins with inner purification. You examine what was shaken, not to blame yourself, but to learn. Where did you ignore your instincts? Where did you over-explain? Where did you trade peace for approval? These questions are not weapons, they are tools. Stoicism treats mistakes as instructors, not verdicts. Reflection is how strength is refined. Next comes the discipline of boundaries. Not emotional walls, but clear limits, rooted in self-respect. You do not announce them, you live them. You no longer justify your decisions to those who misuse explanations. You no longer offer emotional access where it is exploited. This is not withdrawal from life. It is selective engagement. Epictetus taught that freedom is not found in changing others, but in mastering what you allow to disturb your inner state. Boundaries are how that mastery is practiced daily. As boundaries solidify, something unexpected occurs. Your nervous system calms. Conversations feel simpler. Choices feel lighter. You are no longer bracing for subtle attacks or hidden motives. Peace returns not because the world became kinder, but because you became clearer. Stoicism never promised safety through control of others. It promised stability through control of self. One of the final lessons here is forgiveness rightly understood. Forgiveness in Stoic terms is the release of resentment, not the restoration of access. You forgive to unburden yourself, not to reopen old wounds. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to not be like the one who harmed you. That means you do not carry bitterness forward. You do not rehearse injustice. You simply refuse to let it shape who you become. Living without bitterness does not mean forgetting. It means remembering without emotional captivity. The memory loses its charge. The lesson remains. You move forward with sharpened discernment, not suspicion. Trust becomes intentional rather than automatic. Kindness becomes grounded rather than naive. This is maturity, not loss of innocence. Stoicism ultimately brings you back to one central truth. Your inner world is your responsibility, not your past, not other people's intentions, not their approval or regret. Just this: when you guard your character, everything else reorganizes around it. Relationships become clearer, decisions become cleaner. You no longer need to diagnose evil or label others. You simply recognize alignment or misalignment and act accordingly. A life lived this way is quieter, less reactive, more dignified. You stop explaining yourself to those who benefit from misunderstanding you. You stop proving your worth to those who cannot see it. You invest your time and energy where it is met with respect, honesty, and mutual growth. And when such environments are absent, you remain at peace with yourself rather than compromised with others. This is the Stoic promise. Not a world without harmful people, but a mind that cannot be ruled by them. Not immunity from pain, but immunity from manipulation. Not constant happiness, but steady self-command. If something in this reflection resonated, let it sit without urgency. Stoic wisdom works slowly, reshaping how you move through life rather than demanding instant change. Awareness is the first protection. Discipline is the second. Peace is the result.